I'm the CEO of TotemFi, which is a kind of staking-based prediction market for the crypto community. So previously been working in corporate and international tax, but a big crypto fan. So my brother got me into crypto in 2013 when he ran his first Bitcoin event. I remember presenting it to my economics class about Bitcoin mining, and my economics tutor laughed me off the stage, ridiculed in front of the class. But we've been some diamond hands and some strong pickaxes since then. Studied maths and economics at university. And then, as I say, last year and 3 or 4 months been running TotemFi as CEO there. So well versed in the crypto sphere and loving being in there full time.
Cool, man. So maths and economics. It's your undergraduate degree.
Yeah, exactly.
When did you finish that?
That was, so I started it in 2015, I think.
God, this is so much younger than me. It's hard. It makes me feel so old to realise I must be one of the oldest guys in crypto.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, that's cool. So you must have only recently finished then, like 2017, 18?
Yeah, exactly. Fresh out of the blocks. Still got the energy for those 16-hour days coming through.
Yeah, man. It's so. For a bit of context for people listening, I think I met Harry for you so I think Harry's going to join us in a bit. What's Harry's role at TotemFi?
He's CMO, but really we're just like together. Harry's my brother, for context. He's 5 years older than me, and he's also crypto crazy.
Yeah. Crypto brothers. And yeah, so we both started around the same time. What time did TotemFi start? Was it 2020 or was it a bit later?
Yeah, September 2020.
Yeah, we were about the same time, weren't we? So yeah, we bonded over the trauma of going through a crypto raise at roughly the same time. And yeah, it was a bit of a crazy time. We were both doing prediction market stuff because we've got markets.vote. You've got a prediction market. So remember, prediction markets were like super hot.
Yeah. That was the metaverse phase, or the Polkadot. That was pre-Polkadot phase where everything prediction markets was like, let's do it.
Yeah, so it was, for those who weren't around then, so DeFi summer was after the Corona crash, and like, when was that? July? March?
It was March to September.
That's right.
There was a huge crash on the 30th of August.
Yeah.
31st of August. I was away on the weekend, so I was like I went to like Somerset with some friends, and it had no signal. And I left feeling pretty happy, came back, portfolios in tatters.
It's crazy to think back when, so there was it looked like it was all over. Bitcoin was at 3K in March. Like 3,000, you could buy Bitcoin for $3,000 in March. And everyone thought it was over. And then YFI and Compound tokens came out. And DeFi summer started. Everyone discovered that you could do tokens again. Like, the context was that no one thought utility tokens were ever going to happen again at the start of that year. Everyone thought it was over forever. No one's ever going to be mad enough to do ER20 tokens again. And then DeFi summer happened, and it was just a token frenzy. Everyone was doing yield farming. That was the big craze. And then it all burnt out very quickly. And it was done by like September, which was, when we just raised as finance.vote, you must have done it about the same time. And it was like everyone had give up again. Right, crypto's dead again. And the hot things at that time, when you bounced out of that.
Now recording.
Oh, Craig's recording again. It was Polkadot. Everything was Polkadot. Everything. And prediction markets were the thing. And it was when everything was Polkadot but wasn't Polkadot.
Because the substrate.
It's weird that now Polkadot is coming live. No one cares because it's all NFTs. But the kind of origin of both of us really was out of that Q4 2020 period when prediction markets were really hot. So, like, how are people still interested in prediction markets? Are you finding that, or have people cooled off it like they've cooled off DeFi?
There's a funny mixture. People love predictions, but I think there's no prediction market protocol that has really nailed stuff.
Yeah.
People tend to find some of the predictions, like in a volatile area, it's like quite tough.
Yeah.
That's where our kind of whole angle was, of saying that there's all these DeFi users, but like prediction markets are tending to get like very low liquidity, not very much use. can we be a bridge in between saying we're not going to take market share from your poly markets or your more Augur, these kind of bits? Can we provide something innovative as like an accessibility into using predictions of saying we're going to use combined staking and some kind of gamification via predictions to give people a nice in the middle ground? Because obviously throughout DeFi summer, just staking protocols of single token native staking were like getting valued at 100 million.
Yeah.
And sort of people in crypto's attention span is extremely low. So we're saying people don't want to just stake their token and get a yield sometimes. They want to be moving a bit more fluidly. That's why some of like the insurance protocols, they're quite good products, but they're too boring for people of just like staking in a mutual fund. They want a bit more from it. So that was like the rationale. I think prediction markets have had a tough-ish time in terms of no one's really grabbed it and taken it in terms of a yearn finance and the yield generator sort of thing, or an Aave, although there's obviously compound and some of the other ones. Like when you say Augur, that's probably the only one that comes to people's mind, and I don't think it's used massively.
Yeah, I agree.
So it's tough. It's a conundrum because people also do find like the prediction and gamification element fun. I think it hasn't necessarily been delivered in a awesome way yet, or just maybe people don't have the time, because it's also the time is very difficult. Like how long do you want to make people stake or enter into these predictions? Because like the longer you go, people are less likely to do it. But the shorter, people they're busy at work or trading or doing other stuff.
Yeah.
What's the optimum time for people when like getting the most usability? It's a difficult one.
It is. And so the TotemFi as a product is designed to basically, it's a prediction market. It's got the staking prediction market hybrid where you almost like optimize your yield by making predictions.
Correct.
And so as certainly people in our DAO are probably aware that like I'm super interested in prediction markets. One of these things that in crypto markets we have these kind of hype cycles where we get super excited about something and then we forget about it for a bit and then it comes back a bit later and we get excited about it again, then it goes away again, then comes back in waves. And I think we've just done the second hype wave of prediction markets and they're going to come back. They're a bit like, same with DAOs. We got very excited with DAOs in 2016. We're getting excited about them again. And I think when prediction markets do mature, it's going to be absolutely crazy because it touches on a few different things. One is betting markets, which is like decentralized betting generally. The amount of money in the gambling market or just essentially in the betting market, IRL, is absolutely astronomical.
Huge. And that's just the reported.
Yes, absolutely. And
when it's decentralized, you're going to be tapping into some of that.
Yeah,
probably.
It's the permissionlessness and gambling are an interesting mix because it depends on your sort of perceptions of like how good gambling is or whatever. But it's something that everyone's done. The whole history of humanity. Some of the earliest things, if you look back, like literally 2,000 years BC, some of the first like artifacts that we found are like gambling games. People like games, people like money, and it goes back a long time. And nation states deal with that in different ways. Some of them just literally prohibit it and just say, look, you as people, it comes right down to this kind of agency and state protection sort of level of you aren't to be trusted to engage in gambling activity or betting activity, so it's banned. But it doesn't stop it. It's always there still. Normally it's illegal gambling dens or something like that. But there's always been a huge crossover with the crypto market and that part of the gaming sector because it's permissionless. So there's this huge market that is isolated. So if you want to use a credit card or a debit card in loads of countries in the world and you try and use a gambling site, it just gets blocked on the payment rails. So there's this huge sort of thing with the whole game. I think gaming and gambling and crypto is going to go absolutely wild. But prediction markets are they're a bit different than that. What would you think the difference between just like flat out gambling games and prediction markets are?
Yeah, there's also Vitalik is constantly talking about like prediction markets being the most underserved part of crypto at the moment. And his talk at ECC earlier this year in July, he again, for 15 minutes of his hour, talked about prediction markets, and his use case was talking about the improvement / like purification of social media. And saying when people say outlandish things or predictions, saying, can you do post-truth or like post-mortem idea of what people are saying, and how well they did to actually predict those things? I don't know if people have read a book called Thinking in Bets, but one of the parts in Thinking in Bets was saying how much it hones your actually ability to do better predictions if you actually have to like put some money on it or like stake on it.
Yeah.
And I think it's saying that they trialed this out in even like peer review academic papers of saying if you actually had to bet whether this hypothesis would be true, and they got like a 25% improvement in like the feasibility of the hypothesis of like when they said to like, okay, this academic has to review this paper, they might pass it because it's I probably know that person. And I think that probably could be true. And when they actually had to say, okay, you have to bet like £100 if this is going to actually be true, people suddenly think about a lot more things.
Yeah.
And so I think there's more use cases. Obviously, like I know we're circling back to the betting point, there's more use cases of prediction markets being like a wider tool for many different sort of applications within the world. And I think blockchain is going to be the way to distribute that with like micro payments that are all programmable money, smart contracts. Those sorts of bits are what's really interesting. The obvious most first use case is that differentiation between betting and predictions. Like the we're doing of like predict the price of Bitcoin and win Bitcoin in TotemFi is a very sort of simple idea. It's easy to market. It makes sense. But then you obviously have the betting where is Lukaku going to be the highest Premier League scorer? And that's more verging on betting. But I think maybe the higher utility and then ultimately the value is where there's these other use cases. There's almost like oracles. I know there's a few cool services coming out for like qualitative predictions rather than like objective. And like as you expand that, I think there's a lot of interesting stuff there. I think it's incredibly hard to nail because as you get more complex in crypto and with the whole Solana, I don't know if you hear their podcast with Up Only of when they got Maren Altman to do their promotion, and she had to say, Solana transactions are so cheap, I can even live in New York City. It's just like they got slated for it, but they were saying how our tech is so complex and we have to tell people how good it is in three words. And I think with prediction markets, trying to find like really cool novel use cases is going to be the future of them. Rather than just like maybe trying to, I think they will play a part in the betting industry and it'll be massive, but there's also these other avenues.
There's like the infrastructural bit. People have got to understand it. I think that there's a couple of interesting things there. That this concept of skin in the game, I don't know if you've Nassim Taleb's book, Skin in the Game.
No, I haven't.
Is all about that phenomenon of how if you have something at stake, then your concept of risk changes. So so when you've got nothing at risk, you don't care about the outcome. So if you're an academic marking a peer-reviewed paper and you go, yeah, it's fine, pass it, and there's no implication to you whether it turns out that finding was bullshit or not. There's nothing stopping you. There's no comeback for it. So what's the problem? Whereas if you've got money riding on it, then that makes you care. Like all of a sudden there's something about money which is this very visceral version of skin in the game. And prediction markets as a technology allows it. So you could take the peer-reviewed article thing is a really interesting thing. So let's say you could do one on vaccine efficacy, for example. So let's say peer-reviewed paper turns up, finds that vaccines are absolutely fine for pregnant women to take or whatever. And as a reviewer, that would have probably only gone to 3 reviewers, something like that. Now you want those reviewers, the best in the field, and to have something at stake. if it goes wrong, but there isn't in the current design or whatever. But prediction markets could create a market out of this, where there is data in the future that settles if that prediction was right. And I think this is where it gets really interesting, because it allows broad spectrum decisions or just events to be qualified as real or not. So a big part of it is the settlement. So this is why we're at things like the price of Bitcoin, because you can settle it. You guys are using Chainlink at the moment?
Yeah, we're using Link.
So we're using Chainlink as well for ours. We do it across hen tokens simultaneously. Just how much they've moved in a week on markets.vote. And that's settlable because it's got this there's an objective, there's something about markets that are very objective. It happened. You can test the market, you can test the price, therefore you settle it. Settling vaccine efficacy in 5 years' time, for example, is a much more difficult game, but is possible. And I think this is where the prediction market thing can go, where you've got this like broad spectrum decision-making settlement system where people can, so one of the core principles is that other participants, so it's not just the person who's making the decision that's putting skin in the game, it's now everyone else that's also playing the game.
Mm-hmm.
And you get this market dynamic, and the active market at the time gives you an insight into what the crowd is thinking.
Yeah, because that's what I was going to add on of saying, we all know that lots of the prediction market stuff is testing out the wisdom of the crowd and these sorts of bits. And then it's seeing on these bigger questions, using like open source software and like blockchain, collect all of these predictions.
Yeah.
It makes complete sense rather than centralized authority, or it's never been so easy cross-border to almost collect a database of predictions that people know if they're correct, they do actually get paid out. If you saw an ad on your iPhone, like right now or whatever, saying, predict this in a year and we'll pay you $100, you think, bloody lie.
Yeah.
I'm not filling out that. Whereas if you were saying like, stake in here, make your prediction, and in a year, if you're like, if the wisdom of the crowd's correct, everyone gets paid out this, or the people on the right side get paid out, and the people on the wrong side don't. And then you can start to do a lot more mapping of what phenomenon do we see that tends to be far away from the wisdom of the crowd, or what, you could see loads of different insights into like, what are people bad at predicting, what are people good at predicting, and take on all of this data, because I think that is what's quite cool of being able to take information sources or predictions from loads of different perspectives and see what is actually able to predict, or good at predicting, bad at predicting, and like, are people better than you'd expect?
And one of the things is the thing that happened with prediction markets that really, the reason why everyone was super excited about them was because it was at the time of the election. And Augur raised something insane, like $200 million or something in 2016-17. They were one of the first ICOs. So everyone got very excited about prediction markets. And then it sat there with very little liquidity in the markets, and people were like making bets on it, but wasn't very liquid. Then all of a sudden at that time, they had two markets on there, both asking the same question, which is one of the problems with Augur, is this kind of curation problem they've got. But it did actually, the markets did actually predict what was happening, because it got really weird, didn't it? Where it was like, it ran over it and Trump was denying the outcome and all this sort of stuff. But the markets, the kind of propaganda at the time that was being pushed out was that it was far closer than it was, and Trump was really pushing this kind of, the ballots are lying, blah, blah, blah. But the markets on that actually reflected what, I think it even did better than a lot of the statisticians. Like FTX got involved, and there was it was interesting how the prediction market was beating the tipsters and the pollsters going on at the time. So there's something in it. There's something really powerful in it. We just haven't seen that many massive prediction markets happen yet. We just needed that event, that kind of like shelling point where everyone then, let's try prediction markets. I think it's going to be super interesting, and I think you're one of the people, we're obviously very interested, and this whole thing about collective intelligence has fascinated me for a very long time. And the kind of vision of prediction markets is that you get this aggregated belief that allows you to make decisions better in the future. And because it's permissionless and because you've got these open markets, it's genuinely open global sort of aggregation of everyone's belief. Is that somewhere where you want to go? Because I know you're doing the Bitcoin thing at the moment. Do you want to end up as one of these generalized prediction markets?
Yeah, I guess just before we get on to that point is, I guess belief systems is something that's like very interesting, and like a whole lot of stuff underneath there of like how people are wired, different belief systems, and like how people actually come to decisions are very like rational compared to all of the like behavioral economic stuff of saying people don't make very good economic decisions, which is where this kind of like skin in the game prediction stuff helps. In terms of real world events, I think that's definitely where one aspect of the three sort of prongs we really want to focus on is on-chain assets, off-chain assets, and real-world events. And it's, I think, balancing at first, having it still be like not permissionless to saying we want to take a governance vote, like what people want to see the most, but to stop what you're saying with the duplication or like too much choice, we'd rather have, whilst we grow, more focused, usable markets that people all like combining in together. Because in some of the other prediction markets I've also seen, if the volume's $100 and you're the only one in, you don't feel great about it.
Pointless.
So it's saying like when the next election comes up, or when it's people want to talk about like the Super Bowl, and you want to see if like the predictions, how close are they to them, utilize that. So I definitely think the real world events are really nice for just to latch onto and see how beliefs translate into predictions, which do or don't vary from like pollsters and then the outcome.
Yeah, I agree. I think we have exactly the same philosophy of, it was very obvious from looking at Augur that there was 200, because it's open and everyone can make a market. It was 200 of them, 95% of them, if not 99, have no liquidity, and there's just someone set them up for some bizarre reason because they're expecting to find a counterparty for their trade or whatever, and it just never happened. So yeah, I think the strategy of let's keep one market almost you're training people up what a prediction market is, why it's useful. There's a pure economic incentive, so your users are getting good yield on the token and they're incentivized to make predictions, so they're coming back for that. And I think that's just the wise thing to do. We've done the same thing. We're just about to broaden out our markets.vote thing to have more markets. I don't think we're aiming for the generalized event thing. That's just not. Eventually, we'd love to do that, because there's this crossover with prediction markets and governance, which is where you have bets on decisions as you make them to see if they're going to be well accepted. So there's a sort of another dimension from it. So you said on-chain assets, off-chain assets, and events.
Real world. And that's across all your standard like politics, sports.
Yeah.
Weather. But I saw my business mentor, he runs an M&A firm, and this company made prediction markets on grain, like rice yields.
Oh, okay.
And they sold it for a fortune. So they made the most accurate futures predictions on rice. And what they did is they contacted all the local farmers, and they had to predict their yield on rice 1 year in advance. And they were getting the most accurate data points, and they got paid like a little bit to predict their specific plot of yield. And it meant that from all over the world, they had a really accurate prediction of how rice would be in 1 year, which is obviously like a staple food source. So then all of these restaurants, etc., could buy futures either to like hedge or manage that exposure. So when I heard those ideas, I heard something like predictions on rainfall millimeters in Bordeaux for Airbnb. So that's like Airbnb, you can set it to like other people who might care about that sort of data. Yeah. And whilst like weather, I think is much more difficult to predict, the farmer's yield is because the weather's been, and then it happens in a year of like.
Yeah, they've got the sense of the soil and how the weather's been for a period of time.
So I think stuff like that is fascinating.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think your next product is going to be essentially predicting where the market's going to go on, like on assets that haven't been released yet. So you're going to focus on whether and how well an NFT series is going to go.
Yeah, exactly. So we want to provide, as the NFT market expands, so this is the new token coming into place, it's like understanding how and why do people think projects are going to succeed?
Yeah.
And then trying to understand NFTs, they're going to be an expanding industry. Getting almost like a Venn diagram of, okay, we've done like 30 NFT predictions. The general public thought like these 5 were going to be the most successful. If you have them in a Venn diagram, what do they share in commonality? Yeah. And then it's seeing like what people respond to, or if this is sort of people's beliefs and we're getting these predictions, it must be because they believe X, Y, and Z is important.
Yeah.
And stuff like that, where you can pick up that market data, but it's market data that's not in a market research environment of you trying to ask a questionnaire. It's saying you have to predict, and we'll give you money if you
predict. You don't even know the pseudonymous users, so it's not like you can ring them up and give them a survey. This is like the whole market research game. It's way more difficult in crypto because there's just people on the other end of an Ethereum account or whatever. It just made me think then with the NFT thing. So we're doing an NFT series and trying to understand what's making successful NFT projects at the moment. And you might find, so that just because the predictions might be radically wrong doesn't mean that the data isn't useful. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? There might be a bunch of users who predict an NFT series is going to do really well, have a 10th floor at it, and it doesn't. It's a flop.
Yeah.
But what might happen is that what they were doing is getting excited about some utility that's going viral that isn't hitting the market, that's not being digested by the market.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So
so it's like ahead of the game, and
so that those predictions might bear out fruit in 6 months' time.
You always have to like continually test the hypothesis. People thought this was big. It's not big yet. You can check back on it.
Yeah.
If it suddenly becomes.
So it's like that data thing's really interesting.
Kind of like a Decentraland play. Like I've been there for a while.
Yeah.
And then it's
and it happens. It's like being very excited about stuff in the crypto market 5 years before it was a thing. Mm-hmm. and I think that will happen.
Which is an eternity.
Yes.
In crypto. 5 years is, I'd say, probably like 70 or more % of crypto haven't been in it for 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's people who are plugged into different areas that don't necessarily represent the liquidity. So you've got a mismatch between. So I remember we've both done tours of the crypto dungeons in the Telegram groups.
Yeah.
So the real alpha is down in those groups where there's things happening in there. I was reflecting on this when I was doing the little tour of the crypto dungeons in 2020. The stuff that I was seeing talked about in there is just hitting the market now, really. There's like the people who actually turn up to those AMAs in, week out, like they're doing all the tasks for AMAs, have got such a market insight. They can see the deal flow. They can see what's coming in the market before it gets digested in the wider market. The big funds and the crypto whales, they're not hanging around in Face Melter's Telegram group. So I think there's the potential for prediction markets to have this tap into these groups. So, this is just people who they're betting to get some free money, essentially, or optimize their yield. And what you're aggregating is their knowledge from the market at a different level that might be digested by the big money. Mm-hmm. So it is a really interesting phenomenon. I'm really glad you guys are still running at the prediction market thing and going for it, and in fact doubling down into the NFT game, which I think is going to be absolutely wild. So you've TotemFi is not just one product; it's now going to be like an ecosystem.
We're taking inspo from a finance whatever you want it to be. Bank.vote, etc. Yeah, no, exactly. But I think it's also just making sure that stuff's getting a lot more noisy. There's now on CoinMarketCap, which is obviously not all of the tokens, there's now like 14,000 coins/tokens.
Yeah.
Which last year was about 6, and the year before was about 2 or something like that. It's just triple
exponential.
Yeah. So I think it's just making sure that you nail like this what people want to see, and that's the balance of like half prescribing something but also letting people vote on stuff. It's like saying this is the base idea, and then we want you guys to be really involved in like evolving it and helping run it.
Yeah.
But it's also just the Henry Ford quote. It's escaping me slightly, but it's, if I hadn't pushed forward, people would be still asking me to make their favourite horse or something.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So it's a balance. It's like I'm really a big fan of the DAO structure and making sure you have the communities are 100% the most important thing in any crypto project. But it's also about you making still sure that you inject your ideas and provide some guidance we should vote for. So I think it is crazy when you have some votes on something that it is hard to make sure, is everyone the most informed about this? Do they care the most? Because obviously the person who makes the proposal stuff they're the one who pays for the proposal. But the people actually voting, if you got rewarded for being like better at voting or like making better decisions, that's what we're trying to get to in terms of functionality case stuff,
Yeah. And there's this point where, and this is what I anticipated would happen, there's going to be this crossover between voting and prediction markets, where you've got, so where I imagine the kind of futarchy thing to go, I think the way that we might experiment with it is, so let's say we do like a what chain should we go to next to deliver our thing, and we have a prediction market on what the DAO will vote for in 2 months' time, say. So we will go to whatever chain the DAO says we will go to, but before we even start the conversation, we'll have a prediction market on it, and then have 2 months of talking about it or developing on it or whatever, and we've got to find out if we can go there. Do we have to learn Haskell or some stupid language in order to go? And then, but yeah, so now you've got this interesting interplay between a bet and a decision that's coming later, and how there's people are betting on the future decision of a collective of people. And I think that's where it could get really interesting, where we can have this merger of votes and predictions, and they'll weirdly match up with each other in some way, because there's going to be people who've got a big bet on it, who start lobbying for it. It gets into that skin in the game thing again. There's going to be some guy who's got 10 grand riding on ADA and wants finance.vote to do it, and they'll be there every day shilling ADA. Do you know what I mean? But I think that will drive course forward in a way. When people have got skin in the game, it makes them more vocal, makes them like, whether it might make things worse. I have no idea. But
the shillers are
amplify shilling, something crazy. But yeah, I'm super excited about what you guys are doing, and I think we're going to set up this kind of like DAO Alliance idea between us, and you're going to use influence.vote. What are you going to use influence for first? Have you got an idea what you're going to use?
We've got Warrior of the Month coming on your platform.
So what's Warrior of the Month?
Warrior of the Month is like a hailed community member who's done something. The kind of levels of ingenuity and creativity are what's really rewarded. Something to like potentially improve the community. So that's draw up a list of FAQs, make an informative video. Someone made a website last time about what TotemFi is, why it's beneficial to the community. It doesn't always have to be like that big. It could be a set of stickers, gifts, the usual stuff. So it's trying to get the first 2 editions that we ran. We just tried to decide which was the best from our perspective. And we faced a few problems trying to actually do that. One of, if you put it on Twitter, some of our community members, which is buying likes and retweets.
Just spamming likes.
Yeah. So they're saying like, I got 1,000 votes on my end, and then it's can we or can we not disqualify that compared to other ones? So this one's where like your platform's going to be perfect in terms of bringing in classic voting, bringing in people being able to like vote across a number of things, us having more control over, is it the token holders that vote, how much influence get per token, those sorts of bits. But it's trying to say, us as a community, we love everyone that's working to promote TotemFi, like speaking about it, have some tokens each month for any rewards and NFTs that we'll give them for pushing stuff forward.
Yeah, I absolutely love that idea. It's a great example of how it's decentralizing something. So it was that you guys as CEOs or whatever were saying, okay, you are the top community member. And now we can pass it over to the community to decide, and it's Sybil resisted, beating out Twitter because that can be abused and gamed. And now you're going to use your NFTs, that's right, to vote on who's. So you're going to have a list of community members, and then they vote, and the top guy wins.
Top guy wins, yeah, or like a top three.
It's a actually really interesting use case, and I think it's a great use of our technology. You're going to have this kind of sorted list. There's going to be some interesting social dynamics around it. They're going to have to lobby for themselves or something. It's going to be
yeah.
Going to be wild.
I'm excited to see it. I think there's definitely a few more levels of like iterations of once you've done the first few, moving on to what groups maybe the most active users get like an NFT that gives them a high influence score.
Yeah.
And seeing how it evolves of a community running with it, where we can say these are almost like the rules.
Yeah,
you guys can play the game really.
Yeah, it's super interesting, man. I'm excited to see what happens there, and it's just a great way. So one of the things that people are scared by decentralized governance generally, and I think we're certainly looking for examples. Try this. It's like don't have to be a full DAO straight away from the get go. You can just do a bit of voting, do a bit of crowd consensus stuff, and no, I think that's a super interesting place to start. And I've had similar ideas for. We're going to talk about our bank system and our governance framework tomorrow. But eventually, there's this. You've got the same phenomenon of who decides who gets paid what is a huge piece for DAOs. So in our first sort of airdrop, there's going to be a small subset of people of the DAO who ultimately decide what the token distribution is. People have done stuff for us over the last year, really. Everything from supporting us in the Telegram groups to actually working for us on a daily basis. And essentially, we're going to decide what the first part. Getting that done in a decentralized way is super hard, but it's going to be something very similar to that. A vote on what people think contributions are worth, relatively speaking. Will ultimately decide so then you've got, if you can decentralize payroll in the sense that the DAO just decides and it just spends its own money how it wants on and everyone gets paid what they get paid from the DAO, and it's done on a quarterly basis or something. I think there's something really fundamental to what we're experimenting with there.
That is a really tough one, isn't it? What someone's worth, isn't it?
I've just got this
I think it could be massive. It's definitely a function of almost like so much information to try and like hone in on.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll work. I've just got this deep desire to kill HR. HR is just, I think it's just what kills organizations. And there's something really tedious and horrible about I'm looking at this building over the road here, and there's just 10 floors of cubicles, and everyone's just got to come and sit in this box every day, and then there's just tiers of management deciding what everyone's worth, and then you get stuck in this hierarchical system of you've got to bid for there's no meritocracy as such, you know what I mean? It's like there's this system in there where there might be one guy at a cubicle in there that's done something that's changed everything in that building, but he's still getting the same salary next year. Do you know what I mean? It's
yeah.
We're a much more agile system it's obvious Jane has changed the DAO this quarter. Like, she's done something that's just smashed it out of the park. She could get 80% of the distribution of the tokens and become a millionaire. There's something really powerful about this consensus-driven version of payroll. So I think actually you could start with what you guys are doing. This because you're pricing in the value of an open-ended. It could be anything. It could be a website. Could be stickers. Could be just being cool. Exactly. So yeah, I don't know if anyone's in the chat. We've just been chatting away for 50 minutes already. Has anyone got any questions or anything? Drop them in the general chat or jump on if you want to say anything.
I have a question, if that's...
Go for it, Matt.
Yeah. I just wanted to find out why you decided to use finance.vote technology and what other technologies you were looking at to achieve your goals?
Yeah, I guess obviously we're super close with finance.vote and Nick and the rest of the team. So working in and around, and as I said, we'd use like Telegram polls, we'd use stuff on Discord, we'd use Twitter to do the shortlist, and it's just been so easily gamed, or maybe doesn't get the interest or like the excitement of actually saying, okay, we can pick more than one winner or like a top three or have a full ranking and get people involved in a way that's equal to how much they love the community, and saying as we build this consensus mechanism, saying like people who are like really big TotemFi fans, we call them the Warriors, that's why it's Warrior of the Month. You know, how do we get these people engaged and actually voting on what they think is like really good? And then, because then people might end up seeing, I saw a lot of people vote for this type of content that was made. That's a good idea for me to maybe try and do something like that next month. And then obviously like the credentials of the finance.vote team are super, super strong. They're building some ridiculously good products compared to the industry standards. So it's a no-brainer in terms of that side of things.
Yeah, I think there is this personal. We're at this stage where it's kind of buzz versus snapshot for things like influence, but no one knows about us yet. And so we know each other from like basically personal connections and knowing each other from. In fact, a lot of if I meet someone in the room and shill them influence.vote, you can get but it's like it's hard to win over the market at whole. For some reason, Snapshot were just there at the very beginning of DeFi summer, and people can remember using Snapshot when Yearn first came out, and it's just quite difficult to disrupt that. Yeah, I think we do have some like affordances of our technology utility that other products don't have. So at the moment we're still in this kind of growth phase of picking up early partnerships basically through word of mouth. And and like I say, I think we've got something that some other people don't have, which is cool. Any other questions from the DAO? You want to jump in? Ksenia was talking about reforming academia with prediction markets and peer review. I think it would be very interesting to run prediction markets on actual scientific predictions. Is this going to be considered still true in 10 years' time? And you could have a 10-year prediction market on whether the spiciest one will be vaccine efficacy right now.
Yeah. I'm sure you get a lot of volume through that.
Oh, shit, yeah, it would be insane.
What do you think about people's ability to predict long term?
I think
I haven't actually looked into it much, but
weirdly, it's better long term. I think what I think some of the issues that we're hitting is we're asking people to make predictions on markets in a short time window. And on a short time window, markets are just noise. They're like complex systems. Mm-hmm. And it's like trying to predict sunspots or something. It's all weather. This might be buried in this some like general sense, and there might be some traders. There's probably a handful of people in the world where Bitcoin's going to, because they're going to buy $500 million of it.
Yeah.
Or sell $500 million of it. So one of the visions of prediction markets is that it would make sense for that guy with $500 million to make a prediction on Bitcoin price tomorrow, because he's going to make it go there, and then he can make more money out of it. Do you know what I mean? And it creates this kind of incentive. But something like I actually did look into doing a coronavirus numbers prediction market at one point. Talked to a couple of Oracle providers on, could you provide an Oracle for numbers of coronavirus cases in the UK, for example, in 6 months, and let's have a. And then someone taught me out, because it was like out of it. Aren't you just running like a death prediction market? And I was like, shit. Sort of am. But my theory of it was the numbers weren't real at the time. This was like last year, when I spent a lot of time doing data science on coronavirus prediction numbers, on coronavirus case numbers, because at the time when coronavirus happened, when the pandemic started, we thought it killed 1 in 20 people. And it was like, how bad is this going to be? And I was like literally looking at the data coming out, and I thought, this is absolute lies. It wasn't just lies. just bad data analysis.
And this was the guy who did the foot and mouth disease prediction, and
yeah. So I looked at that guy's model and just thought, this isn't very good. And also the statistics were bad. Just the whole data handling still is really, really shit on how dangerous is it, how many cases are there. It's still largely bad. Now, my thinking was, there was a big enough pot of money, the numbers, of all of a sudden skin in the game thing again.
Yeah.
Someone's got $500,000 riding on the numbers being less than 1,000 on Christmas in 2022. There's going to be an incentive for people to make the data better. So there's this interesting.
Go out and spread Corona.
Or that one. This is the other one where it's put me off it. And I was like,
moral hazard.
Actually, if it goes the other way, let's go and super spread some Corona for my bet.
With super squirters.
Anyway, I thought better at the end of the day. But yeah, I think there's this thing about putting a bounty on the quality of data. So when it comes down to academic peer review and so on, if we're having a bet on this paper being true or not, and you're saying, no, I don't think it's going to be true, you're going to invest a lot of money in proving that it's not.
Mm-hmm.
So it could incentivize the furthering of that science and the furthering of that knowledge.
The innovation.
Yeah. So, like Vitalik, and you're onto it, I think prediction markets are absolutely huge and going to be considered huge again in the future.
It's like flares. Shall make a comeback.
Yes, absolutely.
Flare trousers.
Right, has trends, but what it'll take is another event that drives a big prediction market frenzy again. Like it was the election last. It might be probably a good idea to buy prediction market before the next election cycle, because it's going to happen again.
Ready up.
Maybe
we'll do a joint one.
Let's
do a joint mega.
Let's prepare will Trump be president in 2024 or whatever. Market.
Kanye West, isn't it?
Kanye West. There's one prediction market design that people haven't. We're doing something like it. There's something called prediction tournament. Gnosis had a go at it, where you've got several things in a line, and you have this kind of like horse race of live traded tokens over time, and you get this kind of like ordering system. Like Ksenia calls our market a cockroach race, which is like busy. On Link, Bitcoin could be top. But I think there's a whole design space for prediction markets, which dovetails with futarchy and decision making, that I'm convinced is going to be. I think it'll be maybe the 2028-9 crypto thing, but it's going to be absolutely massive. And we were talking about what you've got to do is just stay alive until then. Have your token in the market. Yeah. So yeah, man. Any other questions, thoughts? Anything you want us to talk about before we wrap up? You're talking about cybernetics conferences. No, that's good.
Sorry, I have another one, if that's all right. So I've kind of got this thing in my head where it's like people in crypto generally are willing to take on a, let's say, prediction / bet, depending on how you define that. But it needs to be like a 10x, 100x return. They're generally not that keen to take on a 1x or a 2x or something. So there's this, I don't know if I'm expressing myself very well, but there's like this conflict there within us. Like we can see the thing, we're open to the thing, but we're not going to do the thing because the risk-reward ratio or reward-risk ratio isn't big enough.
Yeah.
APY paralysis of
right. There you go.
Of some of these nutty things, like
we've been ruined by SHIB. This is what happens in late stage bull markets. Is everyone gets greedy, everyone wants a 30x. It's gone from the traditional markets where if you get 5%, you're really happy. You're fundamentally beating the bank.
You can get that on Bitcoin.
Yeah, just staking, but like. It gets to the point where this is why DeFi's gone flat at the moment, because no one wants 6% yield on stables now. They want 60x on dog coins. And that's when everyone gets overextended, everyone gets too leveraged up, everyone goes all in, and then everyone gets wrecked, and that's when you have a bear market. And I think
That's where I think prediction markets can level up, and it's very difficult because the sentiment gets terrible during bear markets.
Yeah.
But if you make something where people can predict on the way up and on the way down,
Moderate market where it's like the predictions are known to be pretty good, and then when the predictions go slightly bearish before the dip, people start to sell off before going. You get less blow off tops, more of a smooth market.
for sure. And I think in terms of like the question of like people wanting to, it's people's right now mentality or attitude in crypto. They don't want to predict something where they can get a 10% yield. That sounds terrible, even though it's amazing. If you have a 1 week prediction, 10%,
Yeah.
it should be like people just flying into it. But at the moment, that's why that almost like the events you predict on maybe have to be more extreme, and then the more extreme event you have, people want to predict less. So it's like almost like a paradox of saying,
Yeah.
if you do an easy prediction, yields would be low.
Yeah.
And if you do like a crazy prediction or something that's a bit more obscure, then people might not have enough information, want to join the market.
Yeah.
And there must be somewhere in the middle of this is like a good APY for how to trade this.
I think we'll find that sweet spot, and I think it'll certainly be fun for us to collaborate down the line on different kinds of prediction market design. We're doing Markets 2.0, which is going to be another iteration on ours, and I'm just like really glad that we'll be collaborating. We're both running at the same thing. It's an absolutely huge use case. Yeah, and I like, for me, prediction markets are going to be this thing. We're always going to be developing something in that space, ready for when everyone gets excited about it again. It's like, we do prediction market. No one really cares that much at the moment, but it won't be long. But I do think what could lead that market is NFT predictions. I think that's such an amazing idea.
I think, and it's only going to expand a lot of stuff, isn't there, going on?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just nailing down so many aspects to expand into.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a time of plenty. All right, I think we've gone over our hour. Unless anyone's got any final questions, I think we'll wrap up. Awesome. So anyway, as it will happen, we'll set up a DAO Alliance group for the TotemFi crew. They'll be hanging around in our DAO. Some of the users will be around in the future. We'll keep you posted on how their votes go. It might be that they'll need help. So one of the things we imagine to happen is that the FVT crew hanging around in here will be able to guide the lost TotemFi users who come over asking how influence. We'll all help them figure it out. Thanks everyone for listening. I will be back in here tomorrow. I'll talk to you then. See you later, everyone.
Cheers.
See you later.
Cheers. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, and thanks, Joel. Thanks very much for coming along. It's been great.